Is there anybody out there?
The lights in the night sky. Skywatchers. We're watching. We're watching.
Did you see that?
Skywatchers.
Skywatcher on Skywatcher Radio. SkywatcherRadio.com.
And we are on the air again, Skywatchers Radio. This is your host, author Deborah Jane East, and we're watching the skies in North Carolina and all over the world. And as a matter of fact, I have somebody that's been watching the skies across the seas. I want to welcome my guest, John Hansen, and he and his partner, Dawn Holloway, are the authors of sort of an encyclopedia of British UFOs. And John is a retired detective, and his partner, Dawn, have been researching and documenting UFO cases since the 90s. And he has a lot of great information. I love talking to John because he's always got something new. And I want to welcome you to be on our show this evening, John. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and I'm pleased to say that we've cleared up that little discrepancy that somebody seems to have changed my name to James, but I won't hold you to court for that, Deborah.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's been a confusing evening. We've had all kinds of technical difficulties, but, you know, that's what happens, you know, when, you know, things just fall apart, you know, the last 2 minutes before you're supposed to go on air. But, John, tell me, I know that you are just currently like a chapter away from finishing. Is it Volume 10?
Yes. Volume 10 covers a period 1989 to, hang on a minute, 88 to 89. And currently I'm in the process of completing that book, which also covers a slice of American, Australian, Tasmanian, New Zealand activity chronologically from 1940 to 1962. And but the last sort of 10 pages relates to some pretty strange images that have not only been seen in Rendlesham Forest, but places like Nevada and other parts of the world. But to be honest, it's nearly 600 pages, this book.
Gosh.
In colour, and I suppose it's a bit like giving birth. I've got to the stage where I just want that baby to be born, because I do get a little bit tedious towards the end of these things, probably because of the weight of information that's contained within these books, and I just want to get into 1990, which is ridiculous.
Well, you cover, you know, I have one of your books, and I tell you, there has never been a book like yours that has as much information, as much details, pictures, graphs, newspaper clippings. I mean, it is loaded, and you could sit, you know, I'm a speed reader, and I can usually read a book within a day or so, but I'm still reading on the volume that I got, because I mean, it really, there's so much information, it makes you just want to go and research things and look up more stuff about them, because they're so intriguing. So I can imagine it does, after a while, get tedious.
Well, it does, although the individual accounts are always fascinating and have always been of great interest to me, especially bearing in mind that all of these years later, from the late 1940s, when the public became aware of all of this, of the UFO phenomena, it never ceases to be an amazing thing, and I really can't understand why we've never really changed public opinion about UFOs. Because these things are here, and as you know, they've been probably here for a long time.
Yes, I believe like that they have been here for a long time and they've just been covered up. But one thing that I'll say about your book is you not only, you go into old cases and things that people have read about, but you you bring other things to light about the cases, and I think it's that attention to detail that is so compelling when you read your books. And I'm excited that you're exploring other cases in other countries, too, a little bit.
Well, that's right. Some of those cases we've obviously credited them and contacted the guys, the people that carried out those investigations, because they are the people on the spot. They are the people that have researched this stuff going back to the 1960s and 70s, and they are the people to be promoted within our book and within our books. And if you bear in mind that this, we've had to increase the price of the book because you're talking about a 600-page book with colour. And I couldn't do that through a traditional publisher or a print-on-demand publisher. I can only do it myself. So I decided. And
I know that has to be very expensive.
Well, it is. But what I'm saying is that they're very reasonably priced for what they are, and they certainly don't reflect the thousands and thousands of hours spent putting the books together and driving all over the country and meeting people and so I think at the end of the day it's hopefully a legacy that I can leave behind for other people to read about,
Well, I certainly believe that it is. And speaking of interesting people, I think you had a meeting not too long ago with somebody that is pretty interesting in itself. You want to talk about that?
Yes, we had a meeting with Charles Holt, retired Colonel Charles Holt, who most of your listeners will know was the base commander at Bent Waters and Woodbridge back in the 1980s. And he's always supported the Haunted Skies books, and we've always run the script through him, which is the only way to do it. Occasionally, there are questions that I've asked of him, and sometimes he has asked us not to publish his comments, which we haven't. But it's a fascinating case. It's one of those incidents that absolutely hooks you. One tries to get away from it, but it's what the public are interested in and have been for a long time over here, and I think also in the States. So, as I say, we had a meeting with him, and Brenda Butler came with me. And Brenda, of course, has known Colonel Holt since 1980s. I think in the beginning she was a thorn in his side. But they've got attached to each other, as it were. And he always makes a point of coming over to see her. And I'd never actually met him face to face. And I met him at the pub in Woodbridge a few weeks ago, and asked him what he wanted to drink, and he nominated a Yellow Label beer, and after a pint and a half of that, he still hadn't told me any more.
It did loosen him up, huh?
Well, it loosened him up, and I think it loosened me up, but it's strange. It was an excellent beer, and I can tell the people out there, and I'm not advertising this beer for any particular reason, but it was it's called Speckled Hen, which is a most unusual name, and it's certainly I can't pick up a bottle of Speckled Hen without thinking of Colonel Holt in the evening that we spent with him, and as I say, found him to be a charming man. I'm pretty sure there's a lot he's not going to tell us, never will. But it was great to actually meet him, and as I said, he's recommended the books, and I don't think you can really say any more than that.
Yeah, that's really cool, I think, because a lot of the people that a lot of these witnesses and people involved in the big UFO cases, they're getting older, and some of them are dying, and, everybody loses a chance to talk with them and get more information. So it's wonderful that you got to meet with him.
Yes, I did. I'm not sure whether it's probably directed at both of us here. I'm talking about him and me.
You're still young. You're still young, John.
I try and do a couple of miles run every night just to prove to myself that I can do it So certainly if I drop dead from a heart attack tomorrow, you'll know that. But yeah, it's a fascinating subject, and there is so much to do with the Rendlesham case. And are you still there?
Yes, I am.
So okay, I've got some sort of strange movement on the screen. But the interesting thing about that is that, of course, back in 1979, November 79, there was quite a wave of sightings around the Suffolk area, and which was investigated by Brenda. And on the one occasion, she was actually on the Rod and Gun Club at Bentwaters talking to their friend. Their friend was actually the security guard Steve Roberts. Now, he was the guy that over 12 months later came to see Brenda to tell her about the UFO having landed and that the occupants of the UFO had met with the base commander. But if you can take your mind back to November 79, when they were on base, a very similar situation occurred. When there was a lot of certainly a lot of activity on the base. Brenda and a companion were told they're not allowed to go off the base at all, and they had to wait for the alert to finish. And later they were told that the rumours were that a UFO had landed on the runway at Bentwaters, and that high-ranking officers had gone out to it. Now, how bizarre is that? That happens.
That's pretty bizarre. I mean, why would they say that? I mean, you don't just do those things as a false alarm or anything.
Well, I certainly wouldn't think so. But it's very difficult to know actually what happened there at the end of December. I mean, there is so much that I've written up about it, and so what I'm doing is plucking things out of my memory. But the one thing that really stands out with me is the fact that when Brenda and Dot Street went to see squadron leader Donald Morland, who was the RAF liaison officer on the base in February 81, he thought they were from the MOD, and he started talking about the UFO incidents, and he pulled a file out of the cabinet and actually mentioned words to the effect that this is to do with the guys that were in the forest when they saw things they described as looking like little angels. Now, what an unusual description that is.
That is. I don't think I have ever heard anybody use that description before. I mean, we get the usual, the little green men, or tall or anything like that.
Well, as I say, that's what he mentioned, and I mean, only recently I am fairly sure. In fact, I'm convinced that a lot of photographs taken during one of the evenings when these incidents happened, these photographs were photographs and they were available, but certainly nobody apart from the guys that took them have ever actually seen them. And I'm not talking about I mean, Monroe Nevels, who was out with Colonel Holt, took some photographs, but he says they were fogged and you couldn't see anything on them. And then I know that Jim Pennison took some photographs, and as far as I know, those photographs are certainly not available. But there were other photographs taken, and the thing is, certainly something phenomenal happened there. But unfortunately, each year goes by and different things are put forward. But I will say, and I'm sure he won't mind, but on the one occasion that Colonel Holt met with Chris Pennington a couple of years ago, he actually said to him, "You're on the right track," because Chris has always been convinced it was a satellite that was brought down. But even that doesn't stand that much scrutiny. Other people say it was a Russian aircraft. Some people say it was a film canister. Now, I do know that film canisters were being dropped, but because that doesn't necessarily mean they were Russian film canisters. It's very difficult to get the truth of any of this, because, of course, there are certainly a number of documents available. Well, there's a number of documents which have never been released. So it's a bit like take your pick. But one thing it wasn't, I'm sure, was that airborne lighthouse that was winging its way over the forest.
Was that not the most ridiculous thing? I mean, I've saw a lot of the videos about that, and it just makes me laugh. You know, that's worse than the old weather balloons like they used down at Roswell. You know, that's pretty pathetic. But, you know, one thing I think about is the size. You know, it really wasn't all that big. I mean, the craft, it was not all that big, so who could have fit inside?
Well, this is the problem. I mean, we have reports from one guy was out in the forest and he saw what looked like a missile with a point sticking out of it, covered by a piece of tarpaulin, and he was warned by American servicemen to clear off. And as far as I know, none of those servicemen have ever came forward and said, "Look, we were in the forest that night and we came across this thing which looked like a missile lying in the ground." And so, you know, that in itself is pretty suspicious. But there's no reason for that guy to have lied. This is what he witnessed, and he was told to clear off. Of course, unfortunately, other people now are suggesting it was a cruise missile. I mean, it's ridiculous. But of course, I mean, we do know that, contrary to what was said at the time, of course, this was tracked on radar and also visually seen by radar operatives as well. And I mean, a lot of that work was done by Robert Hastings, who certainly is a very thorough, very professional researcher back in the States. Sort of snippets like that are worth their weight in gold. So clearly something happened.
Yes, and what about even the maneuvers of the vehicle? I mean, the speed and, you know, the way that it was down. I don't think it was, didn't they say it was hovering on the ground, or it was very close to the ground anyway?
Well, it was close, yeah.
Yes, and they did not hear anything. There was no sound, no displacement of air. So a lot of odd factors with that. And I do wish, you know, if the truth is out there and the people that have that truth, I mean, give it up. Give it up. It's been years and years. I think people deserve to know. But, you know, whether that will happen is beyond me. But I do appreciate all the people who write books and continue to research it.
Well, only because it's so fascinating, and if I'd have thought all those years ago that there was nothing to this at all, we wouldn't even be talking, because you know, contrary to what the media trots out to us still in this day and age, there is thousands upon thousands of sightings of UFOs and a lot of close encounters that have been completely forgotten about. Absolutely. I mean, I spoke to a police constable who was on the RAF Cold Shore. He was there in July 1980, and he saw a diamond-shaped object over the airbase, and there was an alert there. And he was told to keep quiet about it. And, you know, this perhaps, you know, makes people think that we're talking about some sort of covert, top-secret technology, and maybe we are. But certainly that can't be the same covert technology or the same craft that was seen by thousands of people. Well, it has been seen by thousands of people all over the world, hovering over buildings and installations. So that was my phone, by the way. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah,
no problem.
Yeah, so I mean, it's as I say, it's a phenomenal subject, as you know yourself, and the only way that I can record this is to write about it, because it's impossible to talk about all of this. I mean, I could sit here and I could start going through these thousands and thousands of sightings, and probably by the end of it, most people would be asleep at your end. But the only way to do it is put it into a book format and make sure the original illustrations are there, contact the people wherever possible, and do it the way that we do Haunted Skies, because that's the way to do it, you know.
Well, I know this. A lot of times, yeah, these are very important, because other people that have UFO sightings will go back and if they have a date of something that happened to them, or they find out from another person they had a major sighting, then they can go back to other books and reference if other people saw this same event on the same day. Because that's how I found out about an incident that happened with my parents. They had something in their backyard, that made some prints, and it turns out that very night was a very famous case over in Withville, Virginia, with hundreds and hundreds of people, seeing a UFO. So, these things are important, and it's good that I applaud you for taking the time, because I know this is not easy work.
Well, it certainly isn't, but it's enjoyable, but it can, as I said before, get tedious because, currently we're looking at the orbs and some pretty strange digital images, and also 35mm images that were taken not only in England but in America. And of course, one senses that there's a lot more to this than we should probably never understand. There certainly appears to be an agenda behind all of this, and it might be an interesting one, but it's also quite a frightening one, I think, and probably that's one of the reasons why it's been kept under wraps for so long. But I would just like to say I did write a letter to Prime Minister David Cameron explaining what I was doing, and I had a reply back. I certainly didn't ask him for any comment on UFOs because, I think he's got enough on his hands at the moment. But he wrote back and thanked me for the book and sent me a nice letter. And as I said to him, well, look, at the end of the day, I'm only seeking to enhance the sort of stuff that the MOD declassify because, you'll not find much of what I write about in declassified files because they aren't declassified. That's the thing. We have thousands upon thousands of sightings of craft, and none of these are ever declassified, although they are reported to the MOD.
And that's what's so confusing. And I have many friends overseas, and they tell me about sightings and stuff that they had, years ago, and they have written down the dates, some of them, and then they go to the MOD, and there's nothing. They can't find anything, and even though there might be multiple witnesses, so it certainly is confusing to everybody. But you are researching a case that I find thoroughly fascinating, and I started researching it, I guess it was sometime last year, and read everything that I could find about it. So, could you talk about Skinwalker Ranch, because it's a hot topic over here since it's in the United States?
Well, I can only talk about. I've got quite a bit of information here, but as it's available. A good site that I found actually was skywalker.org, skywalkerranch.org. There's some very interesting stuff on there. Some quite good images of things that were photographed there during 1996 and 1997, and I'm sure it's not the only ranch. I think the Bradshaw Ranch in Sedona was another one back in the 1990s that also experienced a similar phenomenon. And I'm funny enough, I've just emailed the guy that originally brought it to my attention in a book that was called Merging Dimensions, which I found absolutely fascinating about some of the things that were being photographed and seen there. And it parallels very much with the Sherman Ranch, as it was called, and then called Skinwalker's Ranch. Absolutely amazing stuff there. But I've been speaking to retired Colonel John Alexander, and I think a lot of people have heard of him. He's part of the Disclosure Project. Well, he was one of the original investigators there, and Mr. Robert Bigelow, who's this multi-billionaire from Las Vegas, who most people know about, he bought the ranch so that these investigations could be made on it, and I certainly there's certainly some very strange things happened there. But as we said before, the problem with this is that you can when you're trying to iron out exactly what happened, there is a problem because, first of all, there were a number of cameras, infrared cameras, which were set up around the ranch. And, these cameras were going, as I understand, 24 hours a day. And they did spasmodically record strange things. Not every day, because these things didn't happen every day. But I don't know where this information is. I've tried to contact some of the other NID guys who were involved, but I don't know where all that information and where's all the photographs and where's the original statements. I've even contacted MUFON and one or two other organizations in the States, but there's an awful lot of information there that is probably been, I suppose, has been filed or archived, but it is a very interesting series of incidents that took place. And I mean, what you had examined some of it yourself. Did you not find it absolutely fascinating?
Yes, I did. I found it fascinating and some of it actually disturbing. But we're going to end this as part one of our interview with John Hansen, and we're going to be back in just a short break.
You've been listening to Skywatcher Radio Show.
Is there anybody out there?
If you'd like to be a guest on the show, contact us through our website, skywatcherradio.com, or on our Facebook page.